When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg, and I'm the host of Yoga Birth Babies, and I'm really excited to share a community birth story. What's really special about this particular community birth story is our guest has been with us for 3 pregnancies. She figured out that she started at the PYC community back in 2018, actually at our old studio space. We were there for 17 and a half years. We moved to our new space, and it's really kind of amazing when I reflect back. I remember a postnatal class, sitting on one of the big birth balls. I would do that when the babies were a little fussy and need to be held. And I had her son on my lap. Fast forward over 7 years, and now I have her last child, her daughter, often sitting on my lap. It's such a joy to watch people blossom and grow into parenthood and go through different pregnancies. So when I brought up to Nitzan, would she be a guest on the podcast? She said yes. And what was really beautiful in this conversation, she said that when she would do her runs, because she's a runner, she would often listen to the community birth stories. So kind of a full circle situation. So in Nitzan's story, she talks a lot about how this was a different experience than she had originally thought her birth would unfold. She had 2 births that were a result of an induction, and then she had another unplanned induction. And she talks a lot about grappling with that and coming to terms with that. And then she shares the story of how her birth unfolds. And it was really a beautiful, empowering story. And she was able to make decisions that, while she even questioned them at the time, ultimately felt right for her. I can't wait for you to hear the story, but let me tell you a little bit about Nitzan. So she has been living in New York City for almost 10 years. And prior to that, she lived in Atlanta, Georgia, where she did her undergrad and grad school for accounting. And she's originally from Israel, where she met her Israeli husband. And she is a CPA, and she works at Ernst & Young's for the past 10 years. And she's very active in her kids' schools and serves on the PTA. And in both schools, of course, she is the treasurer because she's a CPA. She loves to travel and run and be outside. And her kids are Daniel, Shai, and Yuli. And I will say, you do hear Yuli's voice or little sounds in this podcast. And I know sometimes people are like, oh, you can hear the baby, but this is a story. This is a birth story. So the results of the birth is part of the story. So you do hear Yuli making cute little gurgly sounds a few times throughout the podcast. I'm so excited for you to hear Nitzan's story. Now, before we get to that, I always love to give updates about what's happening at Prenatal Yoga Center. So really the best way to stay in the loop is to head to our website, prenatalyogacenter.com. You can subscribe to our newsletter. We do a weekly newsletter where we give different videos and tips and just keep you up to date. The website has the latest schedule and our workshop and our on-demand and our teacher training. Everything is on there. Plus our blog. It has been happening for honestly, over 20 years. It's a lot of blog entries in there. And of course, our past podcasts. So there's so much material and also some free yoga videos. You can check that out there as well. So much. So head over to our website. Now, I always like to take a moment and thank you, the community, for leaving a rating and review. A little hint, if you haven't, please do so, as well as giving me some ideas. So I've been running this podcast for over 10 years, and I often return to the same topic with a different speaker or a different point of view. But I've really loved that you, the listener, has sent in some ideas for me to find guests to speak about. It's really enjoyable for me to think, what can I give back that you want to hear, as well as maybe a new topic I haven't thought of. And then also, many of you have applied to be on the podcast. So thank you. I really love getting to know the community and hearing your stories. And I think that's it. So thank you so much. And we're going to take a super quick break. When we come back, please enjoy Nitzan's birth story. Hi, Nitzan. How are you?
Hi, Deb. I'm good. Excited to be here.
I know. I can't believe after 3 kids with PYC, I finally have you doing your birth story. I don't know why we didn't do it earlier, but I guess 3's the charm.
We had to get all 3.
3 times the charm. Well, I'm so excited to dig in and hear not just, I know we're not going to go through all 3 birth stories. We're going to kind of touch on them, but really this kind of, I'm guessing, final experience. So before we jump into that, why don't you start with sharing a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you. So my name is Nitzan. I'm 39 years old. I live in the Upper West Side. I have 3 kids, newly turned 7-year-old, who's my oldest. I have a 4.5-year-old son, and Yuli, the newest member, she is 8 months tomorrow.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, time flies. I'm a CPA, so I've been working for Ernst & Young for the past 10 years. So pretty hectic, but I'm still on leave right now, so I'm enjoying the time with her. And other than that, I love being outdoors. I love cooking, but not the mom, I'm starving type of cooking that I've had lately. And of course, running and just being active.
I definitely think when I think of you as a runner, and I think of your hamstrings. So that is your narrative that's in my brain through all 3 kids. And as we were talking about at the studio the other day, you're one of the few people that's been at both our locations. And I think there's something really special about seeing that through line. So I'm just excited to chat with you. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, I thought about it, and I was at PYC since 2018. So yeah, that's pretty crazy.
So let's jump in, and we're going to talk mainly about Yuli's birth, but of course the others will come into the conversation. So I'm going to back things up before your birth story. Let's talk a little bit about the end of your pregnancy with Yuli. So what was life feeling like as you start to approach your due date with your 3rd baby?
So it was the end of June, early July. It was summer. My oldest was already out of school. I've never made it to 40 weeks with my previous 2 kids. So I always joked about that. Like, that never even occurred to me in my head that it's a possibility to go over my due date, since it hasn't happened to me before. And little did I know, this one will beat them all. Because Yuli was born at 41 plus 0.
So let's talk about, I know you mentioned in your intake, the geopolitical situation that started to add a layer of stress. Do you mind opening up about that, since I know that's something you wanted to share, and let's talk about what was happening in the world and how that was affecting you emotionally during those final weeks?
Yeah, so it was a big part of, I think, why I was really stressed about the time of birth and how I was approaching my due date. My parents live in Israel, and at the time there was the U.S. And Israel operation against Iran. And how ironic is it that we're recording this broadcast and the world is again in kind of similar chaos.
Yeah.
So their flights were canceled, and we have no family in New York, and with 2 kids at home, I was pretty stressed that they won't make it here for the birth. And I was kind of internalizing, like, stay inside, like, hopefully this, will pass and they'll be able to make it. And that was really stressful for me, just not knowing if I'll have my support here. Of course, we had friends that offered, if the case may be to watch our kids, and we've actually done the same for other friends. But I really wanted them here to make sure I was comfortable. So that was kind of the other stress level, and very unexpected.
When did they finally get to arrive?
So they finally got to arrive July 2nd at night, and my due date was July 4th.
Wow.
Yes, so I was just trying to not do anything crazy, but also not anything crazy in my head is still a little extreme for how far along I was. But I did stop running. My mom was like, just make sure she stays in. We'll try to make it. And they were one of the first flights out, paid an arm and a leg, but they made it here. And so.
That must have been really nice to have them.
Yeah, it was really nice. And I was really happy. And, at that point I was like, okay, I guess any day can be go time.
So let's talk a little bit about your other two births in reflection of how you imagined this birth might unfold compared to the previous two.
So for the first two births, I think each one of them had an unexpected twist, and I'll quickly touch upon each one of those. So Daniel is the 7-year-old. He was our first kid. We actually took a hypnobirthing class, really trying to prepare and have an unmedicated natural birth. And so in our hypnobirthing class, they mentioned, this doesn't always happen, but just keep in mind, like sometimes you can get really, really itchy, and it's something that you should look into. And so I mentioned it to my doctor because I have been itchy, and I thought it was just winter. And turned out I had cholestasis. Mm-hmm. And so on Friday, they called me that I have to be induced Sunday because of my results. So I had to be induced for my first unexpectedly. And then for my second, my water actually broke. So also didn't really have that let's wait and see, be at home. I waited a couple hours, but I knew that I was supposed to head to the hospital. So that's what I did about 2 hours after my water broke. So in either case, I didn't get to really labor at home.
And how did you imagine this one would unfold?
So for this birth, I was kind of hoping to get that experience of being at home. And even though I wanted a natural and unmedicated birth, I am also the person that once they get to the hospital, I feel like I'm very affected by the authority and, the scenery. I think that I have a vision of, I can be in this forest in the water and do everything natural. Or if I'm like in the complete opposite setting, I kind of throw everything out the window. I'm like, okay, like it's all or nothing, but it shouldn't be. Mm-hmm. But I kind of had a feeling that, I needed to be home if I wanted it to go my way.
So when they started to talk about induction, and you'd had 2 inductions and you were hoping it would be more of a spontaneous birth, how did that feel to be like, okay, here we go again?
So the funny thing is they actually didn't start really talking about induction, which I was surprised. So at that point, I was seen once a week by my OB and once a week by the MFM, the maternal fetal medicine. doctor. And they were saying everything is okay. I was 38 years old at the time. This was a third pregnancy, also third IVF pregnancy. So they kind of kept a close eye, but they weren't pushing it. I just came every week. They did the ultrasounds. They checked the baby. And they're like, okay, everything looks fine. Let's see what next week brings. And then only at 40 plus 6, the MFM asked me what my plan was. And I was like, I don't have a plan. And he said, well, I think you should have a plan. And then I went back to my OB and kind of mentioned it, and he was still not pushing, which was really nice. I know the induction rate is rising, the pre-scheduled C-sections are rising. So it's kind of fresh to not have that pushed against me, but also I think I was a little bit waiting for some more instructions on like, what should I be doing? Should I be worried? Should I be waiting? But they kind of let me have my space to decide.
How was that? Because as hearing you say, like, in a hospital setting, you're like, I want the authority. And then you're like, I'm waiting for you to tell me. Like, how was that when you walked out of that appointment and they did not give you instruction? It was kind of in your hands. Was that grounding? Was it overwhelming? Was it both? Was it exciting?
I think it was a little bit adding a layer of stress because I was already every day, once you pass your due date, for those that have been or may be in this situation, the text messages are coming. So, did you give birth yet? Did you give birth yet? Like, everyone is, for some reason, feels like they can check in on you every day just because you passed this imaginary, anticipated date that may or may not be on point. So there was that. And then there was my mom that once she got here, I think she was like, okay, let's go. I'm here. And
move it along.
Exactly. You can let it out now. And every time I would come back from the OB, she's like, it would have been fine if you didn't come back and just went straight to the hospital. So I think I was really, on one hand, happy that I can make my own decision or at least have a little bit of a leeway. But I think the stress factor was getting to me from the environment and the people surrounding me.
Yeah, that is definitely challenging because it sounds like you were feeling a little pulled, like internally. You're like, okay, we're going to wait and see what happens. You wanted to start spontaneously. And I know you tried acupuncture, you were coming to yoga, you were trying to get things going. And I can imagine with that pull of people like, okay, here we go. So I can imagine that being stressful. So you shared that you arrived at the hospital somewhat reluctantly for that unscheduled induction. What was going through your mind in that moment?
My OB, so when we left my OB's office, he let us know that he will be covering the hospital shift from 5 p.m. that day to 8 a.m. the next morning. It was Thursday, and so that's a pretty lengthy time that I could see him if I wanted him to potentially deliver my baby. And then his next shift would only be on Tuesday. So I'd been almost 41 weeks from Thursday to Tuesday. That seemed like a long time. And also on Saturday, my second shy, his 4th birthday, was already planned to happen at the park. And in my mind, I thought I could win it all and somehow also make it to his birthday party. Either with a baby or without a baby.
Okay.
So I think that we went home. I had dinner. I put the kids to bed. So it was probably 7 p.m. at this point on Thursday. My parents are here. My husband, everyone is like, okay, his shift is started, so we should just go. And I did want him to deliver my baby. And, at that point, I was already almost 41 weeks. And so also a couple of days earlier, they did a membrane sweeping at the office. So they were trying to get things moving. So I think at the end, we decided to go to the hospital, but I still couldn't walk into that door. We walked around the block a few times, just enjoying the nice summer day or night at that point, and just trying to accept that once I go in, I'll probably get Pitocin and which I've never actually had Pitocin before, despite my first birth also being an induction. So I knew that the way that I thought my last birth would look like may start differently, and it was in my hands to enter those hospital doors. So there was some hesitation there. But then we went in.
Was there a moment of kind of coming to peace with it and acceptance? And I'm guessing, you can tell me if I'm wrong, there was probably a surrendering, but then also maybe a mourning. You're like, this is not how I wanted it to go. But then also an acceptance that it was also finally in your hands. How did that all feel?
I think that was the hard part, because I was single-handedly the one deciding to start the process the way I knew would probably lead to the outcome that I didn't want. Mm-hmm. But I think that at the end of the day, I know we talked a lot about it in prenatal yoga as well. We were kind of mentioning how, this is the situation you're in, so make the best of it. And I think I try to remind myself about that line also throughout the birth journey as well. But you're already here. Like, you made it this far. You made the decision. It'll be okay. Just accept the situation as it is.
Right. Yeah. We talked a lot about, like, here are your circumstances. How are you going to respond to those circumstances?
Yeah, exactly. And I did want my birth to start spontaneously, but also in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city with 2 kids, my parents, my husband. Like, where was I really going to labor? I did not think that part through, right? But in my head, I had this serene space, which was not actually available to me. So I was just kind of running the scenarios in my head. And I was finally realizing that, maybe it's time and we'll make the best of it.
I do love how you gave yourself time to walk around, process it, and make that choice. I think that's great that you didn't, that I think sometimes processing things, and it's great that you had that time, it wasn't an emergency, like you had that time to process. I think that makes a difference. Let's take a break, and when we come back, let's pick up with walking through the doors. Let's hear your birth story. So we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So you made the choice. You're going into the doors of the hospital. What's the story?
Okay. Yeah. So at this point, it's about, I'm thinking 10 p.m. We've walked around. We had dinner at home. We made the drive over. I made sure I had whatever I wanted to eat before, since I knew, coming in that would be a little bit limited to me. So, and again, I didn't really know how it was going to unfold, because again, I came without a scheduled induction. My OB kind of hinted that, third pregnancy, 30 years old, almost 41 weeks pregnant, they won't turn you away. But I think that was kind of making me nervous. Like, I walk in and say, what? So we go into labor and delivery. We go through triage. We kind of discuss the dry details. I was also already 2.5 centimeters at that point. I was at the OB that morning. And so 2 days before, when they did the membrane stripping, I was 1 centimeter. And then later that day, when I had a recheck at his office, I was already at 2.5 centimeters. So I kind of mentioned that there's already, an opening. There's been some movement in the last couple of days, and that I'm here. I thought I was having like on and off like pain, but like not contractions or anything. And also 41 weeks in July, it could be anything. And so we kind of discussed that they could they kept referring to it augmentation. I think that was like a big word, but they're like,
Did they use the Foley balloon to try to open the cervix more and see if that would get things going?
No. So when they kind of took me to triage. And so when they first checked me there, I was 3.5 already. So there was even an additional movement from that afternoon. So they said I didn't need a Foley balloon. And that if I agreed to start the process, then they would just start me on Pitocin. And it was very, very busy. I do remember that, like, every time they would come and try to go through the full intake procedures and the vaginal exam, they were called in a million directions. Like, I do recall it was very, very busy. So at one point I was even thinking to myself, like, maybe they will actually send me home, since they're so busy, but they didn't. They said,
did you secretly want to be sent home?
I think secretly, like, there was part of me that was like, if they send me home, then that means it's not my time.
Okay. Yeah.
And then that means that, it's out of my hands and I didn't decide. I think I kept like trying to find points along the way that would like confirm that like what I decided was the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, after going through the intake, if they keep me, then I should stay. But I also assumed that they checked with my OB and he kind of already knew. He planted that seed in my mind that afternoon. So I figured I would be staying.
So here you're in triage, finally do the intake. My guess is they're not starting PIT until you're in a room. But if you said it was really crowded, plus July, I don't know if you know this, July is when all the new residents, like the med students, graduate, the new residents come in. So it could also be a little hectic. So at what point did you finally get into a room?
I think it was...
Is that Yulia here?
Yeah,
Is that my friend?
Yeah, she's smiling even though she can't hear you. I think she's sensing you.
She knows my voice.
Yes.
She's heard it a lot. All right, sorry. I got distracted by the cute sounds. All right, so at what point did you get into a room?
It was probably around midnight, I would say. So 2 hours after arriving at the hospital. And then it wasn't enough to get a room. It took almost 2 hours to start the Pitocin. At that point, I was already like, let's just get this over with. Like, I'm already...
You're probably tired, too.
I was tired. It was late. And all they had to do, in my mind, was get the medication. No, but it took another 2 hours. I mean, at first, they obviously had to hook me to the machines and the monitors. And I didn't have great chemistry with the nurse.
Tell me about that.
And it kind of started the whole process and like added to my level of annoyance. She was nice, but I think she was very new. And so she hooked my left arm up to the IV in anticipation for the Pitocin, while all the machines and the monitors are on the right side. So I realized this after she already put it in, but I had this line running, either behind me or like across my body, really restricting how I was hoping to still be able to move.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of telling my husband, he was trying to calm me down, but I was like, I just like did not have the best chemistry. Later on, things evolved, in a way that was positive for me. But at the moment, that was very frustrating. And I kept asking, can I get the cordless monitor? Can I get the cordless monitor? Just hoping that will kind of alleviate some of the frustration of how, like, she didn't think through how I was set up in the room. But yeah, so that was kind of the starting point, just them setting me up, waiting for the medication, and that took almost 2 hours to get started.
So once the pit started to flow and you were starting to feel contractions, what was that like?
So at first they weren't really bad. I think I was, still kind of breathing, moving, going through a lot of the things that we say in class. You can do anything for 1 minute. I was trying to time them, but again, I haven't had Pitocin before. And I was looking at my phone and I was like, either I'm not timing something right or this is all over the place and this is what the Pitocin is doing. Because I couldn't get into any rhythm.
Like a rhythm?
Yeah. Like it was either they were close together and really short or like farther away and long. And I think I was driving myself a little crazy trying to like get into some groove that wasn't really happening because they were just basically all over the place. And it took a little bit for them to really start pick up. I think like the first hour, because they gradually came, I think it was every 20 minutes, they came and upped the units. And for the first hour, nothing really was happening. And then my first vaginal exam, so they came probably an hour and a half after starting the Pitocin, asking to check me. And I was like, I think it's too early. Like, I'm not feeling that many contractions. Like, I don't think there's a point. So they actually agreed. They said, okay, we'll be back. And so we kind of kept going through our motions. The nurse came every 20 minutes. I was still pretty comfortable. I was on my hands and knees. And that felt good. The nurse, which I think she was new because she kept standing next to my bed. And I was like...
Did she think you were going to fall off the bed?
I guess. I said I was fine. And she was like, this just makes me feel safer for you.
She might have not seen... And this is unfortunate, and I'm going to try not to go into soapbox, but if she hasn't seen somebody... Because you didn't have an epidural at that point, am I correct?
Yeah, I didn't have one at that point.
So if somebody hasn't seen an unmedicated birth, they may not know that movement, even in a medicated birth, movement is actually it's probably even more important, but movement can help facilitate baby's descent and rotation. So if she hasn't seen somebody actively moving and rocking and working with their breath, I could see how she was nervous because she would be like, what is this? I don't know about this. So I would suspect, I have no idea, but I would suspect it was just so new. And honestly, great for you for teaching that to her. That's great. So, all right. So she's in the room and she's seeing you in all fours. Did she stay or did she head out?
She stayed for like quite some time. I think it was probably like 30 minutes at least. And then I kept asking about the wireless monitor because, again, the way I was hooked up, it took a little bit of maneuvering to like get the line across every time I wanted to flip over.
Yeah.
And so I kept reminding her that I'm still waiting for that cordless monitor. At first she said she had to track it down. Then she said it was charging. There was only 2 on the floor and one of them is being used and I'm next in line. And so I just kind of kept reminding her. And so at one point, I think she went to check on the cordless monitor for me again. And then the doctors came in. I think it was around 4:30 a.m., so 2.5 hours now on Pitocin, to do another exam, or to actually do the first one since I deferred the earlier visit. And I was about probably 4.5 centimeters at this point. So I think like things were progressing, but my first 2 births were actually really quick. So my oldest, from when they started induction to when he was born, was 6 hours. And my second was also my water broke. He was born probably 5 hours after arriving at the hospital. So probably like 7 or 8 hours after my water broke. So in my head, I was already racing against myself. Because along the way, everyone, my OB and everyone was like, this is your third birth. The first 2 were rather quick in terms of, birthing times. So this one will just pop out of you. And so in my head, I'm like trying to compete with myself. And also everyone that told me this was going to be a quick birth because of your history. And so when they came and did the vaginal exam and I was only at like 4 centimeters, I, for no real reason, just kind of started worrying. Because at the end of the day, I wanted to avoid a C-section at all costs. And so in my head, I was like, this is already not progressing fast enough. So they offered to break my water. And I figured that I would wait with that because I wanted to labor a little bit longer on my own and I was feeling fine. So I told them that I wanted to wait. And they said that was fine. And they'll come check back in with me in a little bit. And then I think contractions were picking up at this point. And I decided, I don't recall how, but I knew they wanted to break my water, and I figured that if I wasn't progressing, and once they broke my water, I would feel the contractions more. So I opted for the epidural at that point, thinking that this is going to be a long labor. I kind of wish, I had more information because it seemed like it wasn't going to be a long labor. But I got it around 6 a.m. So I was probably already 6 centimeters when they broke my water.
After they broke your water, did you feel things intensify? Usually, often people do, but I'm wondering, what were you feeling in your body?
I didn't because at that point, so I took the...
Oh, you had the epidural at that point already?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why... Okay, I messed up the timeline in my head. So you got the epidural, then they broke your water.
Yeah, they wanted to progress it, and so I thought it was going to be a while, and I knew that, like your point, that after the epidural, things like it would feel more intense. And funny enough, the nurse was on a break during the time where I got an epidural, and the nurse that came to support me was amazing. So it was kind of nice to have someone that I felt a little bit more connected with during that part than the nurse that was following me up until then. But also, I was another point that I was kind of keeping track of is my OB's shift that was going to be over at 8 a.m. And a big part of the reason I decided to go in when I did was hoping that, they would deliver my baby. So along all this time, I was just
watching the clock.
it's just kind of giving myself like, okay, this isn't progressing, but really it was progressing, but I was giving myself like a deadline that was that was earlier just for a reason. So eventually I just decided to just try to calm myself down and kind of get back to the groove. It was 7 a.m. and there was a shift change. And I loved the new nurse. She was just great. She gave me a popsicle. She let me be on my hands and knees, even with the epidural. She didn't stay by my side. She saw that I was stable because I asked for, I just want the minimal dose. Don't push any more into me. I didn't press the button that they tell you, keep pushing it if you need more. I really just asked for the minimal amount. I could feel my toes. I, could move my legs. And I could get on my hands and knees on my own. So she let me do that.
And so when did things start to pick up? They were like, oh my gosh, let me also ask, who did you end up birthing with? Your doctor? The new doctor? How did things move once this shift changed? And I love that you felt connected to the new nurse, because I do think our emotional state and how we feel safe and cared for does reflect, the hormones in our body that allows birth to either move forward or kind of stall a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that really allowed myself, to trust her along with the process. But no, I did not birth with my OB. It was 10 a.m. at this point. I was looking back at my messages after the birth, and I was messaging a group of mom friends like, this isn't happening, this isn't moving, I don't want to have a C-section, I should have waited, second guessing everything. My baby was out less than an hour after those messages. But the doctors came to check, and I was 10 centimeters. And they're like, you're fully dilated. The new OB, she was really sweet. I also had an immediate connection to her. I've actually haven't seen her in the office before. I was only seeing my OB throughout this pregnancy. I knew him very well, so I actually haven't even seen this doctor before, but she was very happy, very cheery, really excited. Just the moods were great. I think she was kind of giving me a little bit of, the enjoyment back. I told her that I wanted to wait until I could feel more pressure before started pushing. And she was fine with that. She said, okay, we'll be back, or just call us if you feel anything before. If before we're back, we'll be right in. And also, I've gotten a mirror. This is the first thing that I asked from this new nurse. And she went and grabbed it right away. She's like, there's only one on the floor, but I think it's available. So let me just grab it so you have it just in case. So I was feeling a little better about the situation. I had my wireless monitor on. I had the mirror waiting. I enjoyed the presence of the nurse and also the new OB. And so I started feeling more and more pressure. I was with a peanut ball at this point. I was kind of doing a clam shape, open close. with the peanut ball, and the new nurse is like, we love movement, like, yes, let's keep you moving. And so she was really on the same vibe as me and like kind of helping me still feel like I could move and do things to help the birth along. And so I called them. I was like, I'm feeling the pressure. I think I may be ready to push. And she was out into contractions.
Oh, I love it. May all people have that if they want that. Oh, that's wonderful.
The first contraction, it was 2 or 3 pushes. She let me feel her head, which I've never even been asked before. And she's like, you want to reach down and feel her head? I was like, yes, of course. So we got to do that. And then, they kind of let me lead. They're like, when you feel pressure, like you can push. And so when the next contraction came, the second push, the head was out. And I got to see the head in the mirror kind of out, and then the rest of her body came with the next push. So
that is so amazing. Oh, I did not know it was that quick. That's wonderful. So I know after she was born, you learned that the cord was actually wrapped twice around her torso, kind of like a sash. What went through your mind when you heard that?
So I saw that and I heard them calling it, and they specifically mention it's a good thing she has a really long cord.
I was about to say, I was literally thinking that. I'm like, that is like to go around her torso twice, and she was able to descend and get out. That probably was a crazy long cord.
Yeah. And actually, my husband agreed to cut it. The last 2 times, he was very hesitant, and I kind of really wanted him to, and he did this time, and they let him. I was worried that me waiting this labor out could have potentially put her in any danger. And so I was a little relieved, and also kind of confirming to myself, maybe she would have never descended far enough for my labor to start on its own. So I kind of was running the scenario in my head, allowing myself to accept that I needed to help her get out, because I could have potentially waited too long and I would have ended up in the same place anyway. So I was just really glad she was safe.
So you said it took you a while to fully accept this birth. What part of the experience was the hardest to process?
I think I really just wanted to have the experience that I was imagining in my head of like this serene labor at home, like unmedicated birth and I figured this would be my last baby. And so I was kind of giving myself a lot of pressure, to get to experience it. But also I kept telling myself, get a doula. Like, my husband supports what I want to do, but also isn't the one to, be like, no, don't get the epidural, or let's breathe this way or that way. He's like, do what you want to do. I'm here to support you. But with having 2 kids at home, I never actually got around to finding a doula. So here we were. But again, I think that each time my birth story started with, I would say like an outside force, for first the cholestasis and then the water breaking. But then this one, in a way, I was the one that decided to go in, despite, it was a hard decision. And I think at one point I was even ready for someone to tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm. That's an amazing story, and I'm so happy you shared. And I honestly, for me, it feels like hearing all of this, because I've known you for so long, it feels really special to be led into the insides of Yuli's birth. So thank you for sharing. I want to jump to something about postpartum, because I know this about you. So postpartum, and return to running. Let me first, I guess, ask, is there anything else you want to talk about the birth before I shift us to postpartum?
No, I think we kind of touched through the main
All right,
pieces.
so let's jump into this. So postpartum and running. One thing I knew about you is you were going to run, because you like to do this, another marathon. 4 months? It was July, November. So 4 months, ideally, after she was born. So talk to me about that in your mind, like your goal for that and your postpartum recovery.
Yeah, so I've always known I had that goal of running the marathon because I actually found out I was pregnant with her 10 days before I was supposed to run the marathon in 2024. So I've already trained for it and then had to defer. And so that was a goal of mine. And I think that was another reason that I really wanted an easy birth, because I had to catch up on my training. I did try to run throughout my pregnancy and stay active.
Oh, yes, I know that.
So I had a little bit of a starting point, but still, I knew I was going to wait a couple of weeks after birth, and I was hoping to feel good. And I had a long training ahead of me. And so I think my birth actually, in hindsight, happened the way it needed to be to support this goal as well. Like the fact that I pushed for less than 5 minutes. My pelvic floor was feeling great. I didn't really feel like I couldn't run. 5 weeks postpartum, I had a 12-mile run. I did take it easy. I gave my body grace, but I also felt really good. And I listened to my body. I wasn't going to overdo it, but I had a goal, and I think the way that she ended up coming to the world helped support that goal by really having a really great recovery.
That is so beautiful. And I was thinking about you the day of that marathon, because I know that was something you were working so hard for mentally and physically. And I know running is your happy place. I was so happy for you that you got to do that.
It was.
Okay, we're going to take another break. When we come back, if someone listening is struggling to accept how their birth unfolded, I would love to hear what you would want them to hear. So chew on that. We're going to be right back.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Okay, so we are back. So your birth didn't unfold, how you had envisioned, but you went through it, you processed it. What would you say to someone that is also struggling to accept how their birth unfolded?
So I think our birth, like the pinnacle of our pregnancy journey, it starts, with conception or even before. And it's kind of the final moment in your story. And I think there's a lot of hype around that. But at the end of the day, your journey isn't just your birth. It's a whole lot more than that. And I think everyone's goal at the end is coming home with a healthy baby here earthside with us. And so it's okay to take time to process and let the feelings be there. They're valid. But also you created a human and give yourself some grace that you did what needed to be done for them to be here healthy. And
that's beautiful.
And I think I got...
Oh, sorry, was there more? Yeah.
I was just going to say, I throughout the process, I'm always looking for those outside confirmations. And so Yuli was actually born at 11:13 a.m., which is exactly the time my second son was born.
That's so cool. I did not know that. Oh, yeah. That's like the universe saying, okay, this is good.
Yeah. So I think that was kind of like my final like, okay, everything works out the way it's supposed to work out. Like, what are the chances they're born exactly at the same time? Both.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
So as a mom of 3, you've been through this rodeo a couple times. So what is your one final piece of advice or tip you would like to offer to new and expectant parents?
Of course. Thank you. Yeah. So I feel like this time around looks very different than my first and second, but something that I kept in mind since my first baby came home, and something my mom told me, she was, just change out of your pajamas. It may seem very small, but you may have a very short window of opportunity to make it out of the house. And if you're already dressed, then chances are you may be able to take that little walk. And so I kind of made it into a habit to just get out of my pajamas in case I was able to go out with my newborn. And that really helped to just be ready and allow myself to go outside. I try to go out every day at least once. And so I know it's really hard with a newborn at home. But for me, that really helped to just be able to go outside, and something as little as change out of your pajamas so you're ready to go out really helped.
That is great advice. The funny thing is my mom told me something really similar. And I remember it really helping, because the times I didn't, and I still remember this, I would feel kind of, this is just me, I'm not responding to anyone else's, I would feel kind of, I'm going to use my own words. Like, I feel kind of gross. I'm like, I'm still in the same clothes, and I have milk on my body. Like, I needed to, and sometimes I didn't want to, but I kept hearing my mom's voice, like, change your clothes, just change your clothes. You're going to feel better. And that's such great advice. Maybe it's a Jewish mom thing, but maybe Jewish moms. Oh, such good advice. I loved chatting with you, Nitzan. I loved hearing Yuli's story. I love just hearing more about you and your thought process and your experience. Thank you. And I love hearing you, Yuli. And I'm just so appreciative that you opened up and shared. And I think that others facing that same question, should I have an induction, and feeling kind of torn, can reflect on this and understand where you're coming from, and maybe find courage in themselves. So thank you so much for sharing and for being part of the PYC community for so long.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I actually used to listen to the community birth stories during my runs. I have very limited time, so I take the time to really listen to the podcast, and being on here is very special. So thank you very much for having me.
You're so welcome.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.